You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Guardrails in artificial intelligence systems function as protective boundaries, designed to constrain and shape how a model behaves in order to ensure safety, compliance, and consistency. Much like physical guardrails on a road prevent vehicles from veering off into dangerous terrain, guardrails in AI serve to keep system outputs within acceptable lanes of operation. They do not drive the car, nor do they dictate the destination, but they ensure that movement remains safe, predictable, and aligned with pre-established rules. In practice, this means that guardrails can prevent a chatbot from giving financial advice outside of regulatory standards, stop a language model from producing toxic or harmful speech, or restrict outputs that could inadvertently disclose sensitive information. By establishing these constraints, developers give both users and regulators assurance that the system operates responsibly, minimizing the chances of unsafe or non-compliant outcomes that could erode trust or invite legal risk. The purpose of guardrails goes beyond mere limitation. They are foundational to building trust in AI systems. Without them, models are vulnerable to producing harmful, biased, or otherwise inappropriate outputs. Even if such incidents are rare, a single harmful output can have outsized effects on reputation and adoption. For enterprises, the stakes are even higher. A medical assistant bot that provides unsafe recommendations, or a banking AI that violates compliance requirements can lead to lawsuits, regulatory fines, or harm to individuals. Guardrails ensure that these worst-case scenarios are minimized by actively filtering or constraining outputs before they reach users. They also create consistency. Without guardrails, models may generate answers that are technically correct but inconsistent in tone, scope, or policy adherence. With them, users receive responses that are safer, more reliable, and better aligned with the organization's values and obligations. In this sense, guardrails are both a shield and a compass for AI. Policy engines add another layer to this reliability by operationalizing the enforcement of rules at scale, whereas guardrails represent the conceptual boundaries of what is allowed and disallowed. Policy engines are the systems that implement, monitor, and enforce those boundaries. They function like the traffic controllers who oversee and manage vehicles within the lanes marked by guardrails. Policy engines use structured rules to determine whether a model's output complies with predefined standards. If an output violates a rule, the engine can block it, modify it, or replace it with a safer fallback. By centralizing these checks, policy engines make it possible for organizations to manage complex sets of constraints across multiple systems and applications. They turn abstract compliance requirements into concrete enforcement mechanisms, ensuring that AI behavior is not only guided by principles, but actively shaped by enforceable rules. A common way policy engines enforce rules is through allow lists and deny lists. Allow lists explicitly define words, phrases, or patterns that are acceptable, while deny lists identify those that are prohibited. This approach is simple but powerful. For example, a chatbot in a banking context might have an allow list that includes approved financial terms and a deny list that blocks risky or misleading phrases. Similarly, a healthcare assistant might deny outputs that reference unverified medical treatments or unsafe dosages. The power of these lists lies in their clarity. They provide precise, binary enforcement. Either the output contains something acceptable or it does not. While allow and deny lists cannot cover every nuance of human communication, they offer organizations a straightforward way to establish baseline safety, preventing obvious missteps before they can reach users. They are often the first line of defense in a layered policy strategy. Pattern matching checks extend beyond static lists by introducing structure to rule enforcement. Using tools such as regular expressions, systems can detect patterns in outputs that might indicate policy violations. For example, a guardrail might flag any output that appears to contain a phone number, email address, or credit card number, preventing accidental leakage of personal information. In other contexts, pattern checks can identify outputs that match the form of offensive language, sensitive identifiers, or regulatory classifications. Unlike simple word lists, pattern-based checks can detect variations and general forms, making them more adaptable to dynamic language use. They act as nets, catching broader categories of outputs that cannot be anticipated in advance with static lists. However, they must be designed carefully to avoid false positives, where acceptable outputs are mistakenly blocked. Despite this challenge, pattern checks remain an indispensable tool for structured, rule-based enforcement in AI guardrails. Domain-specific policies show how guardrails must adapt to the needs of different industries. A system designed for healthcare must follow entirely different rules than one built for finance, government, or education. In healthcare, policies might restrict the disclosure of personal health information or prohibit suggestions that conflict with medical standards. In finance, guardrails may enforce anti-money laundering rules or prevent unlicensed investment advice. Government applications might require strict adherence to classification standards and ensure neutrality in political communication. Each domain introduces unique regulatory frameworks, risks, and cultural expectations. Policy engines allow organizations to encode these domain-specific requirements into enforceable rules, ensuring that AI systems are not only technically proficient but also contextually responsible. This adaptability highlights the importance of flexible guardrail frameworks that can evolve alongside the industries they serve, reinforcing the need for modular, configurable approaches to policy enforcement. To manage the complexity of writing and maintaining policies, some organizations turn to domain-specific languages, DSLs, designed expressly for policy definition. A DSL for policy management provides a clear, structured way to describe rules in terms that are easy for both humans and machines to understand. For example, a DSL might allow a compliance officer to specify that outputs mentioning certain drug names must always include an FDA-approved disclaimer, or that documents containing personally identifiable information must be redacted before sharing. These languages abstract away the technical complexity, making policy creation accessible to domain experts who may not be programmers. By formalizing policies in a DSL, organizations gain consistency, scalability, and clarity in their enforcement strategies. This approach transforms policies from ad hoc configurations into systematically managed assets, aligning guardrails with organizational standards in a repeatable and auditable way. Guardrails can be applied in-line during the generation of text or externally as post-processing filters. Inline guardrails shape outputs as they are being created, constraining the model's behavior directly. For instance, they might prevent certain phrases from being generated at all. External guardrails, on the other hand, evaluate outputs after generation, blocking or modifying those that do not meet policy standards. Each approach has advantages. Inline enforcement is efficient since it prevents non-compliant text from ever being produced, but it may limit flexibility or creativity. External enforcement offers more control since it reviews completed outputs, but it can add latency. Many systems combine both approaches, layering constraints to maximize coverage while balancing performance. This dual strategy ensures that systems can respond dynamically to evolving contexts while still maintaining robust safety boundaries. The benefits of guardrails are clear. They increase user trust by ensuring that outputs remain safe, consistent, and aligned with expectations. They also reduce regulatory risk by enforcing compliance rules automatically, lessening the likelihood of costly violations. For organizations deploying AI at scale, guardrails create confidence that systems will not veer into harmful or embarrassing territory. At the user level, guardrails create a smoother experience, since outputs are less likely to surprise, offend, or mislead. In this way, guardrails serve both organizational and individual interests. They protect the institution while also supporting the user's trust and comfort, enabling broader adoption and integration of AI systems into sensitive or regulated domains. However, guardrails also have limitations. Overly strict enforcement can block useful outputs, frustrating users and reducing the system's utility. For example, a deny list might inadvertently block benign uses of certain words that happen to match restricted terms, creating false positives. Similarly, rigid policies might prevent creative or nuanced answers, making the system feel mechanical or unhelpful. These challenges highlight the need for balance. Guardrails should be precise enough to protect users without unnecessarily constraining valuable output. Achieving this balance requires iterative tuning, ongoing evaluation, and sometimes domain-specific adaptation. In short, guardrails must protect without suffocating, ensuring both safety and usability. Guardrails do not operate in isolation, but complement other safety mechanisms such as alignment tuning and moderation layers. Alignment tuning shapes the model itself, guiding it towards safe behaviors through training. Moderation layers, often built into platforms, flag or block harmful outputs across a broad range of categories. Guardrails add a further layer of specificity, ensuring compliance with rules that are unique to a particular domain or organization. Together, these layers form a multi-tiered defense system. Just as cybersecurity relies on defense in depth, AI safety relies on layered protections. Guardrails, alignment, and moderation each address different points of vulnerability, and their combined effect is far stronger than any one method alone. This layered approach is what makes AI safety both robust and flexible. Scalability presents another challenge for guardrail deployment. Enterprises must manage thousands of policies across multiple applications, each with unique contexts and regulatory frameworks. Manually maintaining these rules quickly becomes unmanageable. Policy engines must therefore support efficient management at scale, offering centralized configuration, automated updates, and monitoring across systems. This scalability ensures that organizations can keep policies current without overwhelming administrators. It also allows rapid adaptation when regulations change or when new risks are identified. Without scalable management, even the best-designed guardrails can falter under the weight of complexity. Scalability is not merely a technical feature, but a practical necessity for organizations that depend on AI systems at enterprise scale. Observability is critical for maintaining trust in guardrails. Systems must log interventions when guardrails are triggered, providing transparency and accountability. For example, if an output is blocked or modified, the system should record why and how the policy was applied. This allows auditing, debugging, and continuous improvement. Observability also provides organizations with evidence of compliance, which can be vital during regulatory reviews. Without visibility, users may not know why outputs were altered, leading to confusion or mistrust. With observability, organizations gain confidence that guardrails are working as intended, and they can demonstrate accountability to both users and regulators. Observability transforms guardrails from hidden mechanisms into transparent safeguards that inspire trust. Industrial adoption of guardrails and policy engines is already widespread, particularly in sectors where compliance and safety are non-negotiable. Financial services use them to enforce strict regulatory requirements. Healthcare organizations deploy them to ensure adherence to privacy laws, and governments rely on them to safeguard sensitive communications. Enterprises that once relied solely on human oversight are increasingly turning to automated guardrails to scale their protections. This shift reflects not only necessity, but also opportunity. By automating policy enforcement, organizations free human experts to focus on higher-value tasks while maintaining confidence that AI systems will behave safely. Industrial adoption shows that guardrails are no longer experimental add-ons, but essential infrastructure for responsible AI deployment. As we prepare to move forward, it is worth noting that guardrails are just one piece of the larger picture. While they provide immediate boundaries for safe operation, observability extends this accountability further, ensuring transparency across entire pipelines. Guardrails keep systems within lanes, but observability ensures that the entire journey is trackable and explainable. Together, they form the backbone of responsible deployment. This transition leads naturally to the next discussion, where we will explore how observability applies not only to guardrails, but to the full lifecycle of AI applications, keeping systems transparent, auditable, and accountable in practice as well as principle. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Error handling is a critical consideration when implementing guardrails in AI systems. Simply blocking outputs that violate a policy may protect against unsafe behavior, but it can also frustrate users if no alternative is provided. Effective error handling ensures that when content is denied, it is replaced with a safe fallback response rather than leaving users with silence or abrupt cutoffs. For example, a chatbot might say, "I can't provide that information, but I can guide you to approved resources instead." This approach maintains continuity in the interaction while still respecting the boundaries established by the guardrails. It shifts the experience from one of restriction to one of redirection, keeping the system useful even when limits are enforced. By designing error handling thoughtfully, developers ensure that guardrails act as guides rather than walls, steering users safely while preserving a positive and productive experience. The granularity of policies determines how finely guardrails are applied. Some policies act at the level of single tokens or words, preventing the appearance of restricted terms. Others function at the phrase or sentence level, identifying patterns that may signal policy violations. Still others apply at the document level, evaluating entire outputs for compliance before allowing them to proceed. Each level of granularity has its advantages. Token-level enforcement offers precision but risks being overly rigid, while document-level policies capture broader context but may miss subtle infractions. The choice depends on the domain and the stakes involved. For casual chat systems, broader enforcement may be sufficient. For regulated industries, finer granularity may be essential to ensure strict adherence. Balancing granularity ensures that policies are neither too blunt nor too fragile, achieving the right level of control for the situation at hand. Dynamic policies represent the evolution of guardrail strategies over time. Unlike static rules that remain unchanged once written, dynamic policies adapt as regulations, risks, and societal expectations shift. For example, financial compliance requirements evolve as new laws are enacted, and healthcare standards adjust as medical knowledge advances. Policy engines must be able to update rules quickly and consistently across systems. Dynamic policies may also respond to emerging threats, such as new forms of adversarial attacks or evolving patterns of harmful content. The flexibility to update policies ensures that guardrails remain relevant and effective rather than becoming obsolete. This adaptability mirrors how laws and organizational rules evolve in the real world. Without dynamic adjustment, guardrails risk failing precisely when they are most needed, leaving systems vulnerable to new risks that static rules cannot address. Cross-language guardrails extend these protections across multilingual systems. As AI becomes increasingly global, systems must enforce policies consistently in multiple languages and scripts. A phrase that is prohibited in English should not be allowed simply because it appears in French, Chinese, or Arabic. This requires policy engines to include multilingual resources and pattern detectors that can recognize harmful or restricted content across languages. The challenge is not only linguistic but also cultural, since norms about what is acceptable vary across regions. Cross-language guardrails must therefore combine linguistic precision with cultural awareness, ensuring enforcement that is fair and context-sensitive. This complexity highlights the global dimension of AI safety. Systems must be equipped to serve diverse audiences responsibly, which means guardrails cannot be limited to a single language or worldview. Evaluating the effectiveness of guardrails involves balancing false positives and false negatives. A false positive occurs when an acceptable output is mistakenly blocked, while a false negative occurs when a harmful or non-compliant output slips through. Both outcomes create problems. Too many false positives frustrate users and reduce trust in the system, while false negatives undermine safety and compliance. Metrics that measure these rates provide developers with insight into how well guardrails are functioning. Continuous testing, user feedback, and iterative refinement are necessary to strike the right balance. No system is perfect, but well-calibrated guardrails minimize both types of errors, maintaining a balance between protection and usability. Evaluating effectiveness ensures that guardrails remain an asset rather than a burden, protecting users without obstructing valuable interactions. Security considerations extend beyond standard policy enforcement to defending against deliberate attempts to bypass guardrails. Adversarial users may craft inputs designed to trick systems into producing restricted outputs, often by disguising intent or exploiting weaknesses in pattern recognition. For example, someone might insert special characters or use indirect phrasing to evade detection. Guardrails must therefore be resilient against such tactics, combining pattern checks with contextual understanding to detect intent even when it is obscured. This requires ongoing adaptation, since attackers continually develop new methods of circumvention. Security also involves protecting the integrity of the policy engine itself, ensuring that rules cannot be tampered with or disabled. By addressing adversarial risks, guardrails become not just passive filters but active defenses, strengthening the system against malicious misuse. Integration with AI agents expands the scope of guardrails beyond text outputs. Agents often have the ability to perform actions such as executing tool calls, retrieving external data, or initiating workflows. Guardrails must therefore constrain not only what the model says but also what it does. For instance, a financial agent may be allowed to retrieve account balances but prohibited from initiating transfers without explicit user authorization. A research agent may access public databases but be blocked from querying sensitive systems. Ensuring safe behavior at the action level requires policy engines to extend into agent orchestration, verifying compliance before tools are called or actions executed. This integration ensures that safety is not limited to words but covers the full range of AI activity, preventing unintended or unsafe consequences. Latency trade-offs are inevitable when introducing policy checks into AI systems. Every layer of enforcement, whether through allow lists, pattern detection, or policy DSLs, adds processing time. Users, however, expect fast responses. Too much latency undermines usability, no matter how safe the system becomes. Designers must therefore balance the thoroughness of policy enforcement with the need for responsiveness. Some applications, such as regulatory reporting, may tolerate slower outputs in exchange for greater accuracy. Others, like conversational assistants, require near-instant replies. Techniques such as pre-processing, caching, and parallel execution can mitigate latency, but trade-offs remain. The goal is not to eliminate delay entirely, but to keep it within acceptable bounds, ensuring that safety does not come at the cost of usability. The open-source community has increasingly contributed to the development of guardrail frameworks. Modular tools and libraries allow organizations to integrate guardrail capabilities without building everything from scratch. These frameworks often include components for allow/deny lists, pattern matching, and policy management, along with extensibility for custom rules. Open-source guardrail tools democratize access to safety infrastructure, enabling smaller organizations to implement protections that were once limited to large enterprises. They also encourage transparency, since open-source code can be audited for effectiveness and fairness. However, organizations must still adapt these frameworks to their specific domains, since no generic tool can address every industry's unique requirements. The growing ecosystem of open-source guardrails reflects a broader trend of making safety infrastructure more accessible, accelerating adoption across sectors. Policy management carries ongoing costs that must be recognized. Writing rules, updating them as regulations evolve, and validating their effectiveness require sustained investment. Organizations cannot simply deploy a policy engine once and assume it will remain effective indefinitely. Compliance departments, legal teams, and technical staff must collaborate to ensure rules remain current. This ongoing work represents a significant cost, but it is essential for maintaining trust and avoiding regulatory penalties. The cost of policy management should be weighed against the risks of non-compliance, which can be far higher. By recognizing policy management as an ongoing operational responsibility, organizations ensure that guardrails remain effective, relevant, and aligned with both legal requirements and user expectations. Governance requirements amplify the need for robust guardrail systems. Regulated industries must not only enforce rules, but also prove that they are being enforced effectively. This means documenting policies, recording interventions, and demonstrating compliance during audits. Policy engines that provide observability and reporting features simplify this process by offering logs and dashboards that show when and how guardrails were applied. Governance is not simply about internal control. It is about accountability to regulators, stakeholders, and the public. Guardrails that can be observed, measured, and documented are essential to meeting these obligations. In this way, governance elevates guardrails from a technical safeguard to a strategic necessity for organizational credibility. User transparency is another dimension of trust in guardrail design. When an output is blocked or modified, users should understand why. Silent interventions can confuse or alienate users, making them feel that the system is unreliable. Transparent communication, by contrast, builds trust. A system might inform the user that request cannot be fulfilled due to safety policies, or provide alternative safe responses. Transparency turns enforcement from an invisible barrier into a shared understanding of system boundaries. It reassures users that policies exist to protect them, not to arbitrarily restrict them. By treating transparency as part of the user experience, organizations strengthen both safety and trust, ensuring that guardrails serve as visible guides rather than hidden obstacles. Research into adaptive guardrails points toward a future where enforcement becomes more intelligent and context-aware. Instead of relying solely on static lists or rigid rules, adaptive guardrails can learn from interactions to refine their enforcement strategies. For instance, they might adjust sensitivity based on context, allowing technical terms in professional discussions while blocking the same terms in casual conversations. Machine learning models can be trained to recognize intent, reducing false positives while catching subtle risks that static rules might miss. Adaptive guardrails promise to make enforcement more precise and flexible, aligning safety with the fluidity of natural language. However, they also introduce challenges, such as ensuring explainability and avoiding bias. As research progresses, adaptive guardrails will likely complement rather than replace traditional rule-based systems, creating hybrid approaches that combine structure with learning. Industry trends show a shift from reactive moderation to proactive prevention. Early approaches often relied on moderation layers that flagged or removed harmful outputs after they occurred. While useful, this reactive approach left users exposed to risks in the moment. Guardrails and policy engines represent a proactive strategy, preventing unsafe outputs before they are delivered. This shift reflects broader changes in technology governance, where prevention is increasingly prioritized over remediation. By integrating guardrails directly into AI pipelines, organizations create systems that are safer by design rather than reliant on cleanup after the fact. This proactive approach also supports scalability, since preventing problems at the source is more efficient than correcting them after deployment. Industry momentum suggests that proactive guardrails will become standard practice, especially in domains where safety and compliance are paramount. As we move forward, it becomes clear that guardrails are only one part of a broader framework of accountability. While they enforce policies at the output level, observability ensures that the entire pipeline remains transparent and auditable. Together, they create systems that are both constrained and accountable, capable of operating safely while demonstrating compliance. This transition highlights the importance of not only setting boundaries, but also proving that those boundaries are respected in practice. The next discussion will expand on observability frameworks, exploring how transparency across the full lifecycle of AI applications ensures systems remain trustworthy, auditable, and aligned with societal expectations. Guardrails and policy engines thus serve as both protectors and enablers. By enforcing constraints through allow and deny lists, pattern checks, domain-specific rules, and DSLs, they keep AI systems safe and compliant. At the same time, by handling errors gracefully, adapting dynamically, and integrating with agents and multilingual contexts, they ensure usability and relevance. The balance they strike is delicate but essential. Too loose, and systems become unsafe. Too strict, and systems become unusable. Effective guardrails find the middle ground, supporting trust without stifling utility. As they evolve toward adaptive, proactive, and transparent designs, they will remain a cornerstone of responsible AI deployment, ensuring that advanced systems can be used confidently in both sensitive industries and everyday life. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.